Today's episode of White Hot Business is brought to you by the Power and Pleasure Retreat. The Power and Pleasure Retreat is where you take your online and in-person presence from playing small to standing out, making you the obvious and only choice to your dream clients. You'll understand exactly how your astrological chart is in full alignment with your deepest desires, and you'll step into a new level of conviction, magnetism, and power that sees your clients dripping wet to work with you at every touch point. Because when your desires match your next level leadership, everything changes. This is the high-level, intimate 4-night retreat designed to get you paid way more money by accessing your fullest expression and doing things your way. Do things your way, and you attract dream clients, live from your brilliance, and get a business that reflects the highest level of your power and genius. Go to laurenwhite.com.au/retreat for the breakdown and to secure your place. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Sophia Pallas. How are you today, Sophia?
I'm well, thank you, Lauren White. This is very exciting to be back chatting.
I love how we know each other so well and I use your full names.
And we still use full names. Whenever it's important, you got to use a full name. Right?
I know. It feels, it feels like authority energy. I need to address you as the authority that you are in business, astrology, and more. We are coming together today to deep dive into the astrology of 2025 and what women in business need to know for themselves in order to ride the inevitable waves that are in store for us. And I know, I have it on good authority, that you have already done this for us. You've already looked ahead. You've already been starting to speak about what's coming in 2025. And before we go into that, would you be able to sum up what 2025 has in store with us with one word or one theme?
Look, this is a tricky one because there is so much happening this year. But I would say the theme is definitely transition. One word, transition. This is a year of initiating change. We're probably not going to see the changes really fully come to be until 2026. But this is the transition time. So that's where I would go with this year.
Oh, transition. This is interesting. We worked on something last year that was about the transition phase of birth and the transition phase in business, and how using it as symbolism for it's the time where your spirit starts to flail a little bit and you can start to feel like you're losing steam, but it's also the most pivotal point where something big is about to break through. Am I clear? Is that what you're tapping into?
Yes, it is that pivotal point, and it is like that transition point in childbirth. I remember you wrote an email about that. I think that is it. So it is not going to be necessarily an easy, smooth, flowy year. It's going to be one of those years that you're going to remember. You're going to remember this is when things shifted or began to shift for me, or there was some major transition that happened in 2025. And this is where I guess the astrology comes in. You either go with it or you resist it. It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen just like childbirth. The baby is going to come out. But the more you can participate in that transition, the more that you can allow that to happen instead of resisting and holding your body in this tense state of resistance, bracing, the more easeful the process will be for you, and even the less traumatic will be for you. It's that kind of energy that we've got to move through this year. And that's not to sound alarmist or scary or anything. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily and it depends on your own chart and the kinds of transits you'll be experiencing this year. But it is a year that is going to be marked by these like kind of intense energetic shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all going to feel them, whether we feel them really visibly or like more internally. There's going to be something that we have to move through and find and reconnect with our own authority, with our own conviction, and with our own power to
Yeah.
move through that.
Yeah. You've just used 3 of my favorite words, obviously. Like frothing, drooling, conviction, power, authority. Keeping those 3 words in mind,
Mm.
when you see the year ahead, what particular times are we really going to need to call upon our power, our authority, and our conviction as women in business? Are there any standout periods?
Yes. So right now, we're recording this in January, in the middle of January. We are in a Mars retrograde. So the planet of action, of courage, of determination, of potentially power in some ways, one of the planets of power, is, from our perspective on Earth, moving backwards. And
Mhm.
it's doing it in a sign, it's doing it in Cancer, which is a sign that it is not super comfortable in. When you think of Mars, the archetype of the warrior, it is much more comfortable in signs like Aries and Scorpio and even in fire signs in general, than in this watery, nurturing, protective energy of Cancer. And even if you think of the symbolism of Cancer, the crab is defensive. It's not an offensive, like it's not on the attack, always in defense mode. It's always in
Yeah.
reaction mode.
Yes.
And it even moves sideways instead of forwards. Like it's doing things in a different way to the traditional archetype of Mars, which is like move forward, take action. It's like, hang on, we need to protect, we need to defend, and we need to maybe sidestep. And I think this is really significant right now. We also have Mars and the sun. So when Mars is retrograde, the sun and Mars are kind of they're opposite each other in this particular case. Not all the time of the retrograde, but right now we have the sun and Mars opposite each other. The sun is in Capricorn, Mars is in Cancer in the opposite sign. And this is when Mars is the most hot it's going to be.
Ooh.
It is the hottest. And we know what's been happening in America at the moment is that we have these raging wildfires that we have never experienced to this level before.
Yeah.
The last time I think we had this level of unexpected destruction was when Mars was retrograde in Aries back in a couple of years. I think it was Aries, I'm not sure. It tends to happen when we have this kind of real heat of Mars
Mm.
and this real strength, and it's opposed the sun. And so when we think about the archetype of the crab and the Cancer and the protect and defend, there's all of this defensiveness of let's save our homes. We need to protect our homes. Like it's such this symbolism of Cancer and literally using water against the fire. Like the symbolism of this Mars in Cancer retrograde is very intense to me. It's very obvious to me now. Like with the event, you don't always see it coming, but you notice when the things are happening that this is quite an intense time. And I think regardless of where you live in the world, you're paying attention to what's going on, and you're also feeling your own sense of, am I safe? Am I secure? Is
Yeah.
my own home, is my own, that even my business, am I safe and secure? And the Mars retrograde in Cancer is going to bring that really strongly to the fore for all of us,
Mm.
particularly people who are affected physically by this circumstance, but also people who have strong Mars in their chart. So if you're a Mars ruled chart, if you have strong Cancer energy in your chart as well, like you're going to probably feel it much more strongly. And I would say all of us in this type of time need to fortify ourselves in some way. And that's where the authority and the conviction comes back in, because we need to create our own internal safety when we cannot necessarily feel the safety around us. When things feel really unstable and really unsafe, we need to be able to create that sense of safety and that sense of, I've got this, no matter what is thrown at me.
Yeah.
And I think that Mars in Cancer can really be powerful in helping us to do that as well. And we're going to have this there for the next, until April. Mars will be in Cancer. Well, the retrograde only goes for another month or so. And Mars is at its hottest only for the next few weeks. Or even only really for the next week or so, Mars is at its hottest. And then we should notice a bit of a shift in that. But we're still going to be in this Mars and Cancer energy till April. So we've got a lot of work to do in the Cancer part of our chart. And in that sense of like creating our own internal safety, and in our businesses particularly, but also just generally in our physical body as well. Like, do I feel safe here in myself?
Yeah.
So that's the first place. That's obviously where we're starting, because that's what's happening now.
If I can just interject for a second, Sophia, you pointed out this time as originally, just to speak candidly, I came to you with dates for the Power and Pleasure Retreat for 2025, and you immediately highlighted this. Originally, I was coming to you with dates in early March, and you went, yes, you can run, you always say, you can do whatever you want whenever you want to. You just need to know X, Y, and Z is happening. And you were just like, boom, boom, boom. And I know we're yet to get to the next part. I think I have a sense of what's coming.
Yes.
You highlighted this because, to be so honest, and this is the power of your work, when you try to push, which was your initial message on this episode, when you try to push against that energy, the results are not going to be as desirable, favorable, fruitful compared to when you look at the timing and respect the timing. Yeah. And one of the things that you highlighted was Mars would be in Cancer during our retreat. Is that right? It would be out of retrograde, like just they call early March. It would be out of retrograde, but it would still be in Cancer. And you looked at me, knowing that I'm a Mars ruled chart. This is how specific Sophia gets. I just want to highlight that. And you just went, I don't think this timing is compatible for what your intention is. Like, yes, you can do it. And this is what you need to know. If you feel 100% convicted in this is when the timing needs to be. Yeah. And I took that on board, and something else ended up coming up for that time anyway. And I immediately took it as a let's reshift. It all happened very quickly.
Yeah.
Days or a week. And we're going to get to why the timing of the Power and Pleasure Retreat is so favorable. But I just want to note that it already felt so good when you were so honest about it and just said, this is not going to be necessarily conducive to what your intention is. And this is what I love about really allowing the astrology to guide you, not dictate what you do, but guide you. And then there's another thing happening.
Yes.
That I think you're going to teach you now. What's the next thing that's happening that women in business need to know about that could affect how they feel about their power, authority, and conviction?
Yes. So we're going to talk about the Venus retrograde, but I want to first say that absolutely astrology isn't a prescription, right? So you can't be like, don't get me wrong, there are some times where I'd be like, Lauren or whoever I'm working with, absolutely, you are not allowed to do anything at this. They're very rare, and it's usually around an eclipse, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But that's just generally like, we avoid eclipses if at all possible. However, what astrology is, it's just symbolizing what is happening. It's not necessarily like, it's not changing you. You are experiencing your natural cycle of life, and the stars and planets are showing you what that natural experience of life is going to be and is. That's where I think there's just this little bit of a paradigm shift of like, don't think, what the planets are doing to me. It's you are going through your life in a natural way. We're just looking at the planets and we're noticing those cycles that we might not be able to connect with in ourselves, that we need to have this external symbolism to help us to navigate that. It's not changing. Like, if only Jupiter was in my first house, then this would be easier. No, this is how it is supposed to be. This is how it is. But now we can see that these things are, this symbolism is showing us what you might be best placed to be doing this particular time.
Yes.
So Venus retrograde. So we've got Mars, as we talked about. Mars is going to be ending its retrograde at the end of February. And pretty much immediately after that retrograde, we go straight into a Venus retrograde. Now, Venus is our planet of love, of beauty, of connection, of money, of all the things we like, pleasure, all the good stuff. And when she goes retrograde, that stuff doesn't necessarily go. It's not that we're losing all of our pleasure and love and connection. It's that we are reassessing all of our pleasure, love, connection, values, even our money, depending on where this is taking place in your chart or how your chart works. So this particular Venus retrograde is interesting because we actually experience Venus, unlike Mars, repeats a cycle. So we actually have Venus will retrograde in the same place every, I think, around 5 years. I'm not completely sure of that, but there is a time frame where Venus does retrograde through the same spot, and she actually ends up making this 5-pointed star. So over time, she creates this star, Venus star points. And what is happening this year is, and because Venus is the planet of women, it's representative of the feminine principle.
Yeah.
And so and it's in Aries and Pisces. So it's going to be retrograde through Aries, which is a sign that it's not comfortable in, the sign, but that can also show us a lot of this kind of warrior energy of Venus as well, where real feminine power comes out. It's like this kind of, it can also show us the shadow of the shadow side of femininity and the ways that we repress our feminine side, our darker urges, or the things so pretty will come up for assessment because it's a retrograde, right? So when Venus is in Aries and moving forwards, these things will still naturally come up because that's often what comes up when Venus is in Aries, because it's in the sign of war. It's in the sign of courage. It's in the sign of all of that kind of more masculine, but more traditionally masculine energy. So it's going to show us the different side of Venus.
Yeah.
But when it's in Pisces and moves back into Pisces, like it is in Pisces right now, Venus is exalted. It's lifted up. It's most powerful in Pisces. So we're going to see these two sides of Venus. We're going to see this like beautiful right now, this really powerful, how can we be more connected? How can we be more compassionate? How can we be more together? It's like the energy of, someone with Venus in Pisces is but no, I don't want to denigrate any Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is beautiful, but it can be very clingy. It's very like, let's love on love because it's so much love. I don't want to say people with Venus in Pisces are clingy, but it can tend to that kind of like, it's just so into love, just so into all the things that go along with. And it's not just love, like romantic love. It is a romantic energy, but it's also love all the people.
Yeah. That's what I was hearing. That's what I was hearing. Love everyone.
So we see this side of Venus, and then we go into Venus in Aries, which is very much like love thyself, because
Aries is like,
Aries is about you. Yeah, exactly. It's independent, right? And Pisces is all the people and all the things. So we're going to have this kind of very interesting time as Venus moves through this sign. But then as she goes retrograde, as I said, we're going to really be faced with how convicted are we in our values. You know, how
Yep.
strong do we feel in what we stand for and what we believe or what we are all about? Because Venus is what we value and what we are basically passionate about,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So are we really holding firm in that? Are we feeling this is strong? Because the Venus retrograde is a great time to reassess your values. So if something is not feeling good to you anymore, is not feeling like you are connected with it. If it's a partnership, for instance, and you're like business partnership or romantic partnership, whatever it is, if you're all of a sudden like, oh, this person or this thing that I'm doing, that doesn't reflect my value. That's not
Mm.
what I'm here for. I'm not passionate about it. I'm not
Mm.
even interested in it. Venus retrograde is going to be like, okay, let's let that go. So when you come out the other side, you're much more powerful and convicted in what you want to be doing and who you are, what you value, you stand for, what your passion is.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's going to be, again, one of those kind of transition times where it can feel quite challenging at the time, especially if you're going to be letting things go or reassessing things, because we can often find during a Venus retrograde that things like our branding, because it's about aesthetics and our values
Mm.
as well, we need to really like dive deeper into how we're presenting ourselves. And if that feels aligned anymore with our values, it can be around even messaging. Messaging is obviously
Mm.
all about your brand too.
Yeah.
It's not just your logo and your website and all that stuff. It's also what you're talking about, your message. Is it on point with what you value? Or are you being someone, again, just to fit the mold that is expected of you? This is
Yes.
the time that you'll be clearing that out, because
Clearing that out. And then after the Venus retrograde, would you suggest that's a more optimal time to implement what you've learned within the retrograde? Yeah.
yes. So you can use the Venus retrograde to really reassess, like to really dive into what is my, for instance, branding look like? What do my collaborations look like right now?
Mm.
And it's a more of introspective time. It's like,
Mm.
okay, let me look at these things and sit with them and how do I feel? And at the end of that retrograde period, you're going to come out and be like, okay, now I know and have this new understanding and this new conviction in what I want to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So both the Mars and the Venus retrograde are going to give you, when you come out the other side,
Yeah.
more conviction in
Yeah.
what you're here to do. I think that's a really powerful way to look at retrogrades in general, that this time period where it can feel difficult to get things moving, because we are, especially with the Mars retrograde, it's pretty tricky to initiate new things during the
Mm.
Mars retrograde, but to repackage or reimagine something, that's a whole different thing. A retrograde is a great time to repackage and reimagine and bring old things back again.
Ooh,
Right.
I feel
And
that.
and
Yes.
see, but they're not gonna be the same as they were.
No.
Obviously, they have to
No.
evolve, and
Yes.
the retrogrades are asking you what needs to be, like with a Mercury retrograde, what needs to be revised here? And for a Mars retrograde, how does my energy need to shift, or what has shifted about my energy so that I can do this in a different way? And for a Venus retrograde, what has shifted about my values or my aesthetics, the way that I see things or the way that I connect with things
Mhm.
now compared to when I did it before? And how can I
Mhm.
bring that in? As opposed to starting something completely new. Like, we
Yes.
just need to reimagine, I think, is especially with Venus in Pisces, it's a very imaginative energy.
I can hear that. It's
Um,
like re-fantasize.
yes.
I can hear the word like when I hear the word Pisces, I think fantasy.
Fantasy. Yeah. Fantasia, the movie.
Yes.
Remember that? Yeah, that was created when there was maybe it was Saturn in Pisces last time. There's some sort of there's
Wild.
definitely a strong connection with Pisces in
Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
And
Um,
maybe LSD as well.
probably.
Let's be honest. Can you gently direct us into what you've shared with me about the timing of the Power and Pleasure Retreat in June 2025. Can you gently glide us through why those dates are so powerful for what we're there to do and how
Yes.
the women that say yes will emerge from our 4 nights together?
So with this sort of powerful first quarter of 2025, we've gone through these retrograde and come out the other side with this new sense of ourselves, really, and what we're here to do. We go into May and June with a completely new perspective. And when we hit June, things really shift because, and this is the timing for the retreat. So we chose the 5th to the 9th
To
of
the night.
June.
Yeah.
And I was looking at these dates because we have some really juicy connections with Venus. We have some really juicy connections with Jupiter. And we also just have these really clarifying moments with Mercury as well, which I think is really helpful for when you are trying to, like Mercury being our planet of communication and the way we think and the way that we clarify things, right? Mercury is really important. So I just want to double check that I have this. So we have this beautiful Venus sextile Jupiter as we begin the retreat. So what's happening in June is we have Jupiter in its last few moments of the sign of Gemini. So Jupiter has been in Gemini for the past year, since May of 2024. And in June is when it shifts into the sign of Cancer. So we talked earlier about all the work we're doing in the sign of Cancer. And this is when, from June onwards, is when we start to see the change in this part of our chart and like the good stuff coming through. So we've done the hard work, and June is the start of the good, the gifts of Jupiter coming through and kind of cleaning up the mess of Mars. So it's going to be, it's not just cleaning up though, it's really fortifying you in terms of what you've done in that part of your chart to create safety, to create this nurturing, the way that you've nurtured yourself through that period is really going to get a lot of, the word that's coming to me is like a drenching. It's like this rainfall is coming into this part of your chart to nurture and revive it. Mars has been there literally scorching the earth, and Jupiter is going to come in and just gently revive this part of your chart. And that is really powerful because Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, like we talked about with Venus in Pisces.
Yeah.
Jupiter in Cancer is its favorite place. It is very
I didn't know that.
capable. Yeah, it's very capable of bringing you gifts when it is here, of bringing you opportunity, because that's what Jupiter does. Jupiter goes along and it is it's our greater benefic planet. It brings opportunity, it brings gifts, it can bring abundance. It doesn't bring those things if you don't work with it. But you have to be noticing of these opportunities in order to work with them. This is why we can use astrology, because when we know, oh, this is going to happen here, then we can access it more easily. Jupiter is going to be leaving Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini has been giving us all of these gifts around the ways in which we learn, communicate, integrate information. Because Gemini being the sign of like the connector, it's an intellectual sign. It loves information and loves finding out new things. It's very curious energy. So what we've been doing with Jupiter and Gemini is really expanding our mind in some ways, but also connecting the dots and reconnecting the dots, so to speak, in what we're trying to do and potentially in business, in our messaging, and in the way that we want to communicate what we do. And we've had AI as well really expanding in that time. So we've really had to work with a lot more information and words and figure out what sounds real and what doesn't, what sounds like a robot and what sounds like you, and how can you make it sound more like you, and all of that stuff. That is beautiful work for Jupiter and Gemini. And so the start of the retreat, we're coming off this beautiful sextile between Venus in Aries, even though it's in the sign of its detriment and it's connecting with Jupiter in Gemini, also in the sign of its detriment, but it's making this really powerful, what we call is a sextile, is when the planets have sex, it's good for us.
Yeah. Love it. I obviously love it.
It's like a juicy connection there. And I think
Yeah.
this is a beautiful way to close off that cycle of Jupiter in
Ah,
Gemini and enter into the next phase. So
yes.
this is a transition time, but it's a very juicy transition time in June. So because then we have this Venus Jupiter blessing. It's like that final connection where we have
Yeah.
that final dash of Venus through Aries. We've learned the lessons of the retrograde and we've learned the lessons of Jupiter and Gemini. And together they're creating this energy of possibility and setting that tone for awakening you into your fullest expression.
Oh,
And then,
yum.
yes, very yummy. And then the next day, Venus enters Taurus, and Venus loves being in Taurus. It's its home sign, and it brings that kind of magnetic and expansive energy that we've just experienced from this Venus Jupiter blessing into the body. And I
Mm,
think that's what we're there for. The retreat is
yes.
very much about,
Yeah.
your retreats are always about embodiment and
Yeah.
really getting back into grounding ourselves, but also connecting with our deepest desires and what we really want and how that feels in the body. And that, I think Venus in Taurus is just so juicy for this. And I said to you from, I think last year, I was like, Venus in Taurus is the time. Like this retreat is so
It is
Venus in
the
Taurus.
time. Yeah.
So we really want that, bringing all of that through the body, creating pleasure and pleasure on its own terms. Venus in Taurus is very much, I will take my time. I will do what I need to do to enjoy myself and
Yes.
to ground into my physical senses
Mm.
and into my power and anchor into what really matters to me, what I'm really passionate about. Again, using that Venus word. So that's the next step. So we have this, like I said, beautiful Venus Jupiter blessing. Venus enters Taurus. We also have the moon over this whole period moving through Libra and Scorpio. So the moon in Libra is very much about connection, harmony, balance.
Yeah.
And then it goes into the deep waters of Scorpio,
Yes.
power, desire, transformation, all of that
Yes.
good stuff. So it's, you get there with this beautiful, harmonious energy, and then you shift into that transformative space.
Yeah.
So I think that the moon, we always look at the moon when we're, especially on a multi-day event, you've really got to pay attention to where the moon is going to be and what
Yes.
aspects the moon is making and all of that stuff, because that the moon is obviously the closest planetary object to us and it has the most impact
Yeah.
and it really guides our emotions during that time. And I think
Mhm.
this setup is just so good for what we are trying to do through this retreat experience for women in business. Is like,
Yeah.
yes, let's reconnect. Let's connect with your body. Let's connect with the pleasure. Let's connect with the harmony. Let's feel that. But then we're going to go and
Yeah.
extricate all of the stuff that needs to come out with that Scorpio moon. And after that, we end with this beautiful Mercury Jupiter connection. So this is the final degree of Gemini. This is Mercury and Jupiter both in the final degree of Gemini. And this is a very exciting connection because Mercury is in its home sign of Gemini. It's really powerful there, bringing all of the ideas and like the real kind of inspiration through, and connected with Jupiter there in its final degree. And we talk in astrology of the final degree of a sign, the 0 degrees and the 29th degree.
Yep.
So 0 degrees being the first degree of the sign and the 29th, obviously the last degree of the sign. They're the most powerful points of that sign.
Mm-hmm.
So this 29th degree connection is really, to me, very exciting. And really brings in like the end of that retreat of like, okay, now I have this really bold clarity here. I have this strong
Oh,
understanding of how I want to express myself.
yeah.
And then we move into Jupiter in Cancer the following day. This is after you've left the retreat.
Yeah.
Jupiter moves then into Cancer and waters that ground. It nurtures that energy so that you can go on and implement everything with that juicy support there.
Incredible. Incredible. And to use your words, the astrology of this retreat isn't just juicy, it's life changing.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is one of those really sweet spots in the year. We're going through a lot of, as I said, transition. There's a
Yeah.
lot to unpack here about who we are, what we stand for,
Mm.
all of that stuff throughout the year. We're going to feel that energy. But this particular pocket of June, I think, is just so fabulous. It's
Mm.
just such a powerful transition point because we're integrating everything that we've done in that first half of the year and alchemizing it for the next half
The next
of
half and
of
beyond.
2025 and into 26, because as I said, this is
Yeah.
not just playing out now. It is going to show us, it's setting the stage for 2026.
Yes.
Really, everything that's happening in 25 is setting the stage for 26. So I just love this June period in particular.
Yeah.
There are other pockets of 2025 that are lovely as well. And the deeper we get in the year, in fact, the more you're probably going to feel a little more relaxed, a little bit more like a
Mm.
little bit more of a sigh, like, okay, it's happening. Because I think the first half of the year is that real harder work, especially internally. It's kind of hard work. You've got to stay focused on your own. You've got to stay in your power. You've got to
Yeah.
create your own safety. You've got to stay in your conviction that this is going to
This is
happen.
going to happen. This is inevitable. And
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is these first 6 months, we're doing the groundwork. We're doing the internal aspect so that our external reality can
Mm,
match with that and align with
yeah,
that. Because we
absolutely.
can't just have everything outside looking the way that we want it to, feeling the way that we want it to, if
Mm,
this hasn't been given the exact nurturing attention that it
yeah.
requires to be able to hold that and foster that and nurture that.
Mm,
So
yeah.
this timing is absolutely exquisite, and it feels like it will. I know whoever says yes to this, it is coming at a point in the year where they're not just going to need it the most, but really want it the most. They're going to
Mm,
want that
mm,
to retreat for
mm,
these 4 nights so that they can re-enter the world
mm,
and
yeah.
do exactly what they're here to do. The months before it are going to give the clarity, the repositioning, the
Mm,
refinement piece, that's the word I'm looking for, the refinement. But then these 4 days are gonna be, let's bring it
mm,
into the body, let's bring it
yeah.
home so that you can go out and act with full alignment and full
Yeah.
conviction and be the authority.
Absolutely. I think also the first few months of the year are going to be incredibly activating on the nervous system.
Mhm.
And so coming into a retreat in June where you can understand how to drop in and just relax that nervous system,
Yep.
but like not only downregulate, but upregulate, because you're going to be in this state of like pause, like not
Yeah.
necessarily, it's not that nothing will move forward. Things will continue to move as they do, but you internally will be in this state of not really sure what's happening. And that puts a lot of strain on your nervous system. And
Yes,
so
it
June
does.
brings that pocket of opportunity to
Yep.
just recalibrate everything.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
work that you do to really get women into their body and drop in and really just allow everything to fall back into where it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. so that it can then be lifted up again. Because if we don't do that, it's very difficult to go into the second half of the year feeling powerful, because we're still
Exactly.
recovering from this intense contraction that we've been in, or this intense, like almost like a freeze state in some ways. I
Mm.
think this kind of astrology can bring us into a freeze state without us even realizing that we're doing it. So we need to have these moments where we can, just let it go, like just
Yeah.
surrender and recalibrate, I think
Yeah.
is an amazing way to do it. And I know, having been both a participant and working with you at the last retreat, it is
Mm.
such a powerful place to do that,
Yeah.
just to come out the other side and be like, I know what I'm going to do now. Like, I know it because it's in my body. It's not just in
Yes.
my head. It comes
Exactly.
out of your head and
Yeah.
fully connects you to the vision.
Yeah.
That's something that we really can struggle with a lot especially when we're like just trying to get through. It's
Just
all
trying to get
staying up here.
through from our head. And the
Mm.
other factor is, very obvious factor is, if we're always in the same environment
Mm.
where creates a different set of challenges around shifting, evolving,
Yeah.
making big leaps. It's to be extracted from your everyday, ordinary environment. As much
Mm.
as you love where you work and your home, it
Yeah.
creates that, it broadens your vision. It just
Mm.
does. It's just like a new space to
Yeah.
symbolize the newness in yourself that you're willing to welcome in.
Yeah.
And not that everything's new, but what it is that you're willing to welcome in, what it is that you're willing to let go of, and what it is that you want it to stay anchored
Mm.
in your psyche, your body, your energy system, and who the fuck you are. That's what this is about. So, that giving yourself that opportunity to go into a different space is priceless. Like the
Mm.
conversations that we had, because we were in and will be again in such an exquisite space, it creates that natural new perspective on you, what you do, who you are, and what you stand for, and what it is that you want to, what more you want to welcome in through
Mm.
your work and through your legacy.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love it. I'm really excited. I'm so excited to, be there again and
Yes, you will be there
walk
again. So,
through all of this.
yeah,
Yeah.
walk through, dance through, move through,
Yeah.
speak through, silence through, like just all of the modalities that we weave through our 4 days together are there to
Mm.
strike the perfect balance of doing the work, but also giving yourself the space that you need to actually integrate what we're there doing. So, Sophia, as she mentioned, will be present with us at the Power and Pleasure Retreat in June. She will be co hosting, and she will be bringing her expertise in at a number of touch points in our time together so that you get the most out of being there, so that you take your presence from playing small, hiding, to really owning that you're willing to stand out, you're willing to be seen as the authority, and you become the one for the people that you want to magnetize into your work and into your world. And that includes the opportunities that are right there waiting for you as well. Sophia's able to look at your chart and let you know exactly where and when those opportunities are. And she'll go so far as to share how your birth chart is in full alignment with your deepest desires so that you can learn exactly what you need to do to line that up. So, what we do together is we tap into what your desires are, but we don't just leave it on the note of talking about what your desires are. We're both there to give you the exact guidance you need to implement and take action on those desires so that they become your lived reality. The final thing Well, the final reason that we're meeting together is so that you step into your conviction, your magnetism, your power that sees your clients and who you want to work with absolutely dripping wet for what you do. I see your smile there, Sophia.
I love it.
You love it because when you allow, keyword, your desires to match your next level of leadership, that's when everything happens for you. Sophia, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want women listening to know about our time together and what is in store with them? Just what they're going to feel, what they're going to reemerge as and walk away with by the time we come to a close.
So what I've noticed about the way in which Lauren and I work together is that what I can do with the astrology that you might not have experienced before, even if you've had an astrology reading, is to really connect you back with who you are, not just in a personal sense, but who you are as the leader of your business
Oh,
and what you're here to do
to-
to shift in people, to transform, because the types of clients that you and I both work with tend to be people who are disrupting something in their
yes,
industry. They tend to be at the forefront of change in some
yes,
way. And it's really difficult for those women to have a safe space, to understand themselves and to be able to shift into that big vision and the next step. Because often they are surrounded by people who are saying, no,
no,
well, you
don't
can't
do
do
that.
that.
You can't. It's too much. What will people think? This is not the way you should go. You should stick to the things that are safe, that are predictable, the things that make money. Just stick with that. Don't think outside the box. Do the thing.
And so when you have this deeper look at yourself and your chart and your experience in this container, you get to know what you're here for. All of that stuff, kind of that the noise of that really
Yes.
dims because
Yes.
you then recognize yourself as the person who is the leader in this
Yes.
space.
Yeah.
And as the person who is capable, or sometimes the only person capable of doing
Only
this
person.
specific thing that you do, because you are the only person capable of doing this specific thing that you do. And your
Yeah.
birth chart is just a way of understanding that in a new way and
Yeah.
giving you that affirmation that you've been always looking for, but never quite being able to grasp. That's one of the things I love about looking at birth charts, particularly because people often have this kernel of, yes, there's something here that I know there's something I'm supposed to do, but everyone keeps telling me that I can't do that thing. Or
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes it's not even people telling you. Sometimes it's an internal voice of criticism
Yes.
saying, I can't do, what will
I
people
can't.
think?
Yes.
And exposing yourself to understanding your own natal chart and then working with you, Lauren, to
Mhm.
crack that stuff open and
Yeah.
extract all of those stories and all of that criticism and all of that stuff and expose it for what it really is.
Yep.
That's what then allows you to step into the person that you are supposed to be, that you've
Mhm.
always been supposed to be, but you just didn't give yourself permission to be before. So that's what I really love about this work that we do together, is that it's this combination of, let's really see who you are, but you sometimes just need someone to show you and then be able to crack that open, to shift it, to really feel it in your body, to embody it, to take it forward with you.
Yeah.
And then to do the important work that you're here to do with that power and conviction and authority that you haven't had before.
That you haven't had before, or you've had tastes of it. This is the other
Mm.
thing that our clients go through, is they've had tastes of it and pockets of it, but it hasn't stuck around. It's like,
Yeah.
why did I have so much conviction then? Why did I have so much power then? Why did I have so much influence then? And I felt like I lost it. I felt like it went away. And what we're there to do is to say, it can stay around if you choose for it to stay around and you know what to do when the wobbles come up. If you know what to do when you start to waver, and this is where the body really steps in, where the mind can't quite do that heavy lifting. We want both. To be clear, we want both. And most women that we've worked with have done a lot of heavy lifting with the mind and are still grappling with aspects of that. But where we really lock it in is through the work that we do through the body, so that it doesn't just come and play, it stays. That's what we're there. That's what we're there to do.
Yeah.
Because that is the game changer. That's when you get what you thought control was going to give you. That's when you get what feels like the frequency of power. And the reason why we've called it the Power and Pleasure Retreat is not just because you will experience pleasure in its own right on the retreat, but you will experience the pleasure of being in your power. It feels fucking exquisite. It feels like you are untouchable. It feels like you are. It feels like the moment that you decide that you are the one to be the torchbearer, the lighthouse for what you're here to do, because you are the one. It is on you.
Yeah.
Exactly as Sophia put it. And now you get to bring that to life. And I'm so fucking excited for you. So fucking excited. I'm excited for you when you say yes to yourself and for everything that's inevitable that will come as a result of our time together, our short yet potent time together. It's such a gift. Thank you so much, Sophia. I am so excited about what is in store, about what's coming, not just for the astro, but in particular the astrology that's going to grace us at the Power and Pleasure Retreat in June 2025.
Yes.
If you're ready to turn the dial all the way up and mark a moment in time between the past and what's inevitable, and you want to be the authority in your niche, to not only use your voice powerfully, but be heard, the Power and Pleasure Retreat is the only retreat to help you step into ownership as the one by combining the powers of embodiment and astrology. Go to laurenwhite.com.au/retreat for the breakdown and to secure your place.